Can I? Enter my heart here. Borderline personality, codependence, surviving, borderline personality disorder, relationship breakups. The 5 must-know drivers that every codependent needs to know. 5 key drivers, not the only ones, of your endless ruminating and that longing and the inability to stop thinking about the person with BPD. What's driving that emotionally for you? Number 1, it was too good to be true. And you're having trouble believing that because you already believed in the idealization, mirroring, and the person with BPD's codependency, people pleasing of you initially, because it's not really love bombing with people with BPD, but in that all siren song of the person with borderline personality, and you were getting to know them and they were getting to know you, and everything was so fabulous. It was too good to be true. This makes it more painful and difficult because people can know intellectually, okay, well, it was too good to be true, but like, wait a minute. And then what drives you emotionally is an entirely different thing. So the longing for, and cognitive dissonance, of course, plays a role in this, along with emotional dissonance and many other things. But around this belief that it's too good to be true, it becomes a cognitive distortion that drives emotional ruminating, that drives constantly thinking about this person, because you believe still, or may well still believe, that you can get who you thought they were back, or that they're going to go on to be who you thought they were in the next relationship, and you can't lose out on that. But you can't get a person back that doesn't exist, right? A lot of people know that intellectually, but like emotionally, you probably still have this more longing belief while you're ruminating. Somehow I've got to get that person back because yeah, I just have to, or I can still, or they must be in there somewhere, and it's not who they really are, so you really can't do that. But you might be continuing to idealize the person you thought they were initially. So I don't mean idealize in the way that people with BPD do, but you can't get that sort of really fantastic, the way they were in the beginning, feeling out of you, because it's something that really needs healing. You can't just like quit it, kind of thing. Can't quit feeling what you're feeling, because it takes time and it's a process, and it's about recovery, and it involves grief, and it involves first dealing with this first cognitive distortion that's such an emotional driver of why you can't stop focusing on them. You feel like you must have done something wrong. I mean, come on, you must have, right? Because it was so good. And it's like a denial of BPD splitting, really, right? But people with codependency take on so much that now you're taking on, well, if I could have just done this, or could have just said this, or done it, did not do this and not do that. And it's so difficult still to try to process between your thoughts and your emotions, that something that was so wonderful is suddenly become so painful and conflictual, and or it's totally over, because it gets painful and conflictual and confusing before it's necessarily over. And the second big emotional driver to rumination, and why you're thinking about them constantly, holding on to this distorted, what becomes a cognitively distorted belief that this person with BPD is your soulmate, and that no matter what, you're meant to be together. Well, your cognitive dissonance and emotional dissonance fuels this. And many people are unaware of the subconscious pursuit of unmet needs in childhood, right? That's what happens with people with codependency. It's a form and type, not like with people with BPD, of magical thinking, because you believe it, and it's what you feel, and then it drives you in a thought sense to be longing, thinking, ruminating, because you believe that, because you feel it so strongly that this was supposed to be your soulmate, and this is supposed to work out no matter what. It's also magical thinking. It's also partially, or to some degree, or equally as much, a form of denial on the people of the part of someone with codependency. But people are in shock, right? People, when it first happens, and even for a longer time after, people are like, what happened here? And I have so many clients report to me, like, I've had other breakups before. Why is this one like annihilating me. Why can't I stop thinking about this person? So fear of loss, because even if you've experienced the loss already, you might not have processed that emotionally, and you may be still fearing it. People with codependency trying so hard to avoid their own pain and your own needs that need to be healed, apart from and along with what's just happened in the relationship with the person with BPD and the ending of it. And this is a continuing of a codependent repetition compulsion, which is a subconscious thing, but it is part of the unhealthy relational pattern of codependency that nobody actually, quote, chooses, right? But it's something that you do need to heal. And the third emotional driver of why you keep ruminating, can't stop thinking about them, and it's now a cognitive distortion too, is you're continuing, and many people do for long periods of time. It's different with every individual, but nobody really gets over this in 4 to 6 months. None of this stops and just is totally suspended within a short period of time for anyone. And if people make that claim, then it's likely that there's something else going on in their emotional landscape altogether that might well mean about a diagnosis of something in cluster B itself. So number 3 is continuing to believe that the person with BPD really loved you. This is the most central of the most central, because how can you not believe that when you have evidence for it, but you have evidence against it, but you focus on the evidence for it? It's so incredibly painful. And it keeps people really just stuck with a focus on that part of that person with BPD, that part of the whole experience. It's denial, it's shock, it's so painful. Codependents are trying to avoid their own rejection and abandonment fear, the reality that maybe that just happened to you if you were ghosted, or no matter how the relationship ended. Most people have this duality of, okay, so something about this is like, this is really painful, this isn't working, or whatever people might tell themselves. So the realization intellectually that one needs to kind of leave the relationship if you haven't been ghosted, but emotionally, it's much tougher than that for so many reasons. And it triggers just relationship endings, or believing, knowing now you need to break up with them, or if you're in any on and off again kind of situation. All of this triggers people with codependency back to a time in childhood when, as a child, you were abandoned or rejected or somehow failed by a parent. Doesn't mean it happened to you every day. Doesn't mean it was global in your life. But some people with codependency have a cluster B parent, and that can mean a lot more of why you developed codependency in your childhood and what that really means now in a renewed type of way from the ancient explanation of codependency more than 20, 30 plus years ago. And many with codependency, when processing in therapy, that the person with BPD, or if you're trying to process it alone, did not love them, have their own, you blame yourself, and you feel like shame, and you might not be aware of that, but that feeling of being fooled, right? It's like, and people with BPD don't usually, most of them more than not, do not set out to fool you, but you feel fooled and duped by the borderline. This also goes back to your childhood when you felt, not to say you don't feel that by the person with BPD, but yes, it also goes back for many to their childhood where they felt a parent might have been meeting your needs or been emotionally available to you. But looking back on it, that parent really wounded you in one way or another. And people have to really do the family of origin work, self-differentiation healing, among other things, like I help clients with in recovery. So make sure that you don't just listen to anybody on this, and make sure that you don't think there's a 1-2 step or 3-step real quick fix, because there isn't. Wish that there would be, but if you really want to make this pain right now that you might still be in or be in after a while from the relationship, if you want to take this whole experience and make meaning out of it and take the crisis of it and make it an opportunity for growth to change your life and move forward newly and more healthily in your life, then you need to work with a professional, and you need to work with, like myself, if I resonate with you, or someone else, to really address everything about this that needs to be addressed. It's not a 1, 2, 3 easy fix. And people out there talking about it online all over the place, a lot, not all, make it sound like, it's the old definition of codependence, etc. And the fourth emotional driver that becomes a cognitive disorder belief as well is that you are unable to reconcile what the borderline said in the initial idealization and mirroring, and in their codependency, people pleasing of you phase. You just can't reconcile that, and how they then behaved after that is splitting and everything. You can't reconcile what they said, how they idealized you, how good that felt, how wonderful that was, with then how they would end up behaving. And probably before they ghosted you, for sure before they ghosted you, and for sure before, if you left them. Like, you had many instances of not being able to reconcile what was happening with who you thought they were and how wonderful it was in the beginning. And that is such incongruence and inconsistency. It really throws people off, and it contributes to loss of self and a feeling like you're not really sure in regard to that person in the relationship and how good it was, what's happening now, like what's really real. And people are still really wanting that person back from the idealization phase and the honeymoon phase. Understandably why, but that's where you get into sort of fooling yourself. People often fooling themselves and for people with codependency, it's a way of still trying to avoid not only the pain of this relationship and or its ending, but other things it's going to bring up for people that do seek appropriate treatment and recovery. It really is going to be some pain to deal with, but that's going to be freeing, and that will help you know yourself better and will help you to go forward in healthier ways and find healthier relationships. And also, you could be believing against all odds that the borderline meant what they said about you, being the one they got closest to, you being the one they truly loved, you being so special to them that they might have told you you are the quote right person unquote for them. They might have said you are my soulmate and this is meant to be. And so whatever they said versus how they then would split and how they would act, and if they ghosted you or you've had to leave them, that's pretty hard to reconcile, and it drives on an emotional level so many feelings that people need to process in therapy, multifaceted, multi-layered recovery and healing journey. So the feelings that you're not maybe even in touch with are driving these thoughts that you cannot stop having right now. And some people for a longer period of time, most people for months, if not longer after. So they told you all this wonderful stuff about you, and then they turned you into their worst enemy. And like, how do you reconcile that? Because that's not your fault, but yet you might feel like you must have done something wrong. And they just change and push you away, which probably happened many times in the relationship, or sometimes it doesn't happen that many times. Before, some people with BPD will just ghost, especially people with quiet BPD. So maybe there was some push-pull, they pushed you away, then they pulled you back. But trying to deny the reality of borderline splitting really is essentially what happens to people after these relationships. You know about it, you're learning about it, but like emotionally, you're kind of trying to deny it because it's so painful, and the push-pull behavior, and the fact that that is what is true of them more than anything they said to you in the idealization to merge with you, to seek identity through you. And this leaves many codependent exes of people with BP feeling lost to themselves as well. And the fifth big emotional driver that becomes a cognitive distortion, you have romanticized, many people have, with codependency, romanticized the notion of love. That means you keep magically thinking and believing that love will conquer all, or love should have, or love still can conquer all because I really still love them. And even though you have this cognitive dissonance, because like there's that other side, right? But then you go back to the way it was in the honeymoon phase, and you really still love them, and but you want to help them because people with codependency don't realize still how much they still want to change them, how much you are fighting inside yourself because you're in shock and denial, and you couldn't have predicted this, and it's so painful because you want to get that person back. but you can't get a person back who isn't really who they presented like they were, and they weren't. It's not a facade, it's not a mask, it's not a game. They don't do it to you on purpose, but it still is an unfolding nightmare for people, obviously emotionally. And so if you could just get them to understand they have BPD, if they could just go to therapy. See, people are still abandoning themselves to wanting to rescue the person with BPD because you want them, you want what you had back, right? Despite that it's gone, and but that you're feeling, you're in the cognitive dissonance of feeling the good times and then the bad and then the good. And so you really still, people with codependency are really still trying to avoid their own loss and pain. And sometimes even on a subconscious level too, responsibility. Because you're continuing to try so hard to enable them or yourself at the same time that, there's got to be a way to work this out still, because this has to be real love, right? No matter what, and love is supposed to conquer all, and somehow, no matter what happens, we just got to get them back, we just got to try again, it'll somehow work out, which is not true, which is what people are thinking and feeling. So you might have really believed or still believe it was meant to be. And you may still feel that what you describe as such a strong love for them no matter what, when maybe it's not exactly as strong a love for them as you might think. And I clarify and work on that with clients. And that's not to take away from anybody who can love, but with codependency, it's not straight up as much, because codependents have unhealthy relational patterns as well, not to the same degree or level of those with BPD. But so you might have to learn a little bit more about how it is that you love and what's your relational style in healing and recovering from codependency and the relationship breakup and the relationship. So love absolutely, unfortunately, does not conquer all. Love does not conquer borderline personality and those who refuse to get treatment, and it takes years. The unhealthy bond is the borderline seeking rescue and identity from the codependent, while the codependent seeks remedy subconsciously to childhood woundedness, whatever that might be in your case, because it's very different across those who have codependency. It might have been a cluster B parent, emotionally unavailable parent, could have been incidents of different things that were not the most horrible, but did really hurt you as a child. So they're the wounds that you're still carrying with you as a result, whether you're really aware of that or not. So these are really, it's really important for people with codependency to know that there are these emotional drivers, likely coming from your usually coming from people's subconscious, from childhood, from the wounded inner child, that inner child healing work, deep inner child healing work, family of origin, and self-differentiation is a way to go forward. And not just listening to people out there with their 1, 2, 3, or 5, or 3, or 2, or whatever step method, oh, it's easy, simple, or that you can heal and recover based on what anyone else, like on YouTube or writing on blogs or anything. If they say, well, I'm fine now, and I'm fine because I did this, that, and that, or whatever. Well, A, nothing works for everybody, and B, it's unlikely that somebody healed or recovered in 4 to 6 months. And the other thing, because there'll be something else going on with that, but the other thing is that it's really important for you to know that this is your journey now, your process. It's your childhood. It's your past. It was your relationship. This is your pain. And don't let anyone on YouTube or anywhere else online tell you that they have the answers for you, because it's what they did. Like, I'm not here to say I have this in my life right now and I recovered from tons. But that doesn't matter, because I'm here to help you. I'm not here to tell you that you have to do what I did so you can heal and recover. People doing that are gaslighting you, so be aware of that. And just know that it's really important to learn much more about this, which if you resonate with me, I'm out here to help you in a healing recovery journey process. Because some people, and there's nothing weak about this or nothing to feel bad about yourself about this for, some people will go on for months to a year or longer, years even, with this longing, ruminating, because it's being driven from so deep within your emotional landscape that you need to know more about in a healing recovery journey, that you won't be able to have it, you won't be able to heal it, you won't be able to wholly stop that ruminating and that thinking about them a lot, even when you do for a time. It's going to keep coming back, because there's another reason why it's there in the first place, and that's what you got to know more about yourself about. So I hope that was helpful, and yeah, I'm out here to work with you if I resonate with you, and take care.